It's July 4th, 2025, about 9:30 in the morning. Today I'm going to do something a little different. Yesterday, Congress passed the new tax law, and it has some provisions that impact retirees. So I wanted to look at those a little bit and do a couple of, if you will, case studies, two examples. I'm going to see how the new tax law impacts two different couples. And in particular, what I'm going to look at is the change to the standard deduction, additional $1,500 for a married couple filing jointly, and the $6,000 per person bonus deduction for people 65 and older, and see what it does to a couple of sort of representative couples. So let's have a look at it. Oh, and by the way, I'm just looking at the dollars, the money. It won't be till the very end when I make a potential political comment. So the bulk of this video, except for the last 60 seconds, is going to be financial only. Now, as I said, I'm going to do the analysis of the tax implications of the new tax law for two retired couples where they're over 65 and in somewhat different circumstances. The first couple is a retired factory worker, Buzz, and his wife, Mrs. Buzz. They're both 65 plus, and their income consists primarily of Social Security. They get Buzz's base benefit and his wife's spousal benefit, which is half of his, totaling $45,600 a year. And they also have $150,000 in CDs that are generating another $6,375 a year, bringing their total income to $51,975 a year. It's not a lot, but they own their house, they own their car, they don't have any debt, and they're getting by. It's tight, but they're managing. So let's see how the new tax law benefits them. Okay, let's look at their taxes. First, I'm going to look at what their taxes are before the new tax law gets signed into law, which is supposed to happen today. May have already happened, I don't know. So, first thing we need to do is determine how much, if any, of their Social Security is taxable. That's a fairly simple calculation. We calculate what's called their provisional income, which is their non-Social Security income, their interest income on their CDs, plus half of their Social Security, and we get $29,175. Well, that's less than the $32,000 threshold for a couple filing jointly. So none of their Social Security is taxable. Fantastic. So what's their total taxable income? It's just their interest, $6,375. For this couple, the standard deduction is $33,200, and for these examples, I'm going to assume very simple taxes. People are just using the standard deduction, no other deductions. So their income is less than the standard deduction, so they have no income subject to tax, and the tax due is zero. Okay? Pretty good. No taxes. Now, let's look at the impact of the new law on them. Well, Buzz and his wife have the same income, same Social Security, provisional income, still less than the $32,000 threshold, so none of their Social Security is taxable. And their total taxable income is $6,375. However, the new law increases the base standard deduction to $33,700 and gives them a $6,000 per person bonus deduction. It's a deduction, not a tax credit. So they have $46,700 in deductions. Well, $6,375 is still less than that. So they have no income subject to taxes, and they don't owe any tax. So the new law has zero effect on them. They get nothing from it. Okay? Pretty simple. Now, let's consider a somewhat more affluent couple. Here's my second case. In this case, we've got a retired Executive Cedric, with an appropriately pompous last name, and his wife, they're both 65 plus, and their income consists again of Social Security and a spousal benefit because Mrs. Cedric never worked. She was a socialite. But Cedric made good money through his entire career and gets the maximum possible benefit for Social Security, which he took at age 70. So the two of them get $91,944 a year in Social Security. Pretty good. They also have income from their portfolio, which is, for reasons of this, I'm just going to say, regular income, not capital gains or dividends, so I don't have complicated taxes. And they make $58,056 from their portfolio, and this is an after-tax portfolio, for a total of $150,000. Now, I chose that because the bonus deduction starts phasing out at $150,000, and I didn't want to fool with that calculation. So they're making, pretty good money. They're not rich, but they're not poor either. They're getting by without any difficulty. So let's take a look at their taxes before the new tax law. Assuming it hasn't been signed, what would be right now? Well, what about taxable Social Security? Well, we take their provisional income, which is their non-Social Security income, $58,056, plus half of their Social Security. Their provisional income is $104,028. That's way over the second threshold for Social Security of $44,000. So 85% of their Social Security is taxable. So they have $78,152 of taxable Social Security. And their non-Social Security income is also taxable, bringing their total taxable income to $136,208. Not bad. You can scrape by on that. Their standard deduction is $33,200. So that brings the income subject to tax to $103,208. And the tax due, using the standard tax tables, is $12,768. So, they're paying a fair chunk of change in taxes. Okay, let's take a look at what the new law does to their taxes. Well, their provisional income is the same. 85% of their Social Security remains taxable, $78,152. Their non-Social Security income is still taxable, so they have $136,208 of taxable income, just like they did before. But the standard deduction for them is now at $34,700, and they get the $12,000 bonus deduction, $6,000 each, for a total deduction of $46,700, which brings their income subject to tax down to $89,598. We go through the tax tables, we find that they now owe $10,277 in tax. So, how much does their tax liability change? Well, the new tax law lowers their taxes by $2,491. So, yeah, they got a pretty good tax saving, on the order of, almost 20% of their taxes. The tax saving is pretty big because prior to the new law, a chunk of their money was in the 22% tax bracket. Now none of it is. And so they're only paying the 10 and 12% tax brackets. So lower tax rates and less taxable income. So they benefit pretty well. So that is what I wanted to illustrate about the new tax law. And here comes the political part. Guess what? Who is surprised that this new tax law benefits the wealthier taxpayers and does nothing for the less affluent? That's my political comment. So, hope you found this a little video and illustration interesting, and I hope it brings home my point about the new tax law. Thanks for watching.